Okay, so for the podcast today, we're joined by Ian, Dr. Williams from University of Southampton. So basically, we're going to talk about his 2016 paper he co-wrote in the Journal of Environmental Pollution. The title of the paper was Development of Multifunctional Streetscape Green Infrastructure Using a Performance Index Approach. First question for Dr. Williams would be, from the article, streets offer the opportunity for increased tree density. How would this be possible in New York City?
So New York City is a very interesting city because there's quite a lot of green space. I understand it's one of the highest amounts of green space in the world, something like 25, 26, 27% green space. So in fact, the best opportunity for increasing tree density in New York City probably lies in using the existing parks and gardens. You can put trees onto streets, but it's a bit more difficult because the roots can do damage to existing infrastructure, so roads and pavements and property, and also to the underground infrastructure, so drainage systems, underground services such as cables and sewage and water and internet and the metro and so on. It certainly is possible to increase tree density in streets, but I think probably to use the existing green space.
So there's the city itself right now has started trying to integrate green roofs and brown roofs into current built buildings. Has that been taking place in the UK and in Europe from your experience?
Yes, there's been a bit of an effort, but not as much perhaps as in continental Europe. We've seen London in particular make a bit of an effort to have green roofs. There is actually a green roof strategy for London.
Right.
I think something like 40% of all the green roofs in the UK are actually in Greater London.
Right.
This is partially because of something called the London Plan,
right.
Which puts an expectation, although it's not law, but an expectation for developments to have green roofs. Sheffield has had a bit of a go at this as well, has tried to do some with its planning conditions, because they require new buildings which have more than 1,000 square meters or 10 houses to have about 80% cover. But there's been a real steep rise in the interest and implementation of green roofs in the last few years, mainly because of increasing awareness of sustainable development and the need to adapt the built environment to mitigate the effects of climate change. Other factors such as the desire to preserve green spaces because of urbanization, and of course there's a big desire to plant trees and vegetation in general across the world. There have been a couple of universities that have had a go at this. There are some living labs at the University of Sheffield and Salford, and then there's a project called the Ignition Project at the Greater Manchester. So there's a bit of work going on, but it's not as much as has been going on perhaps in other European cities.
Now, you mentioned the living labs. What does that entail?
A living lab is basically an experiment that has been used to demonstrate to developers and investors that green roofs are worth doing. So the point is that you put a green roof onto a building, or you put it into an experimental setup, and then what you do is you investigate using some scientific evidence what benefit it might have in terms of providing insulation, in terms of reducing runoff and all those other things, in order to conserve urban biodiversity, address climate change, carbon sequestration, nutrients protection, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Do you know how many years the Living Labs have been running?
The ones in Sheffield, Salford, and Manchester, probably 3 or 4 years, something of that nature.
Okay, so it's a new enough concept, so that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty new, to be honest. Yeah.
I see, I see. And would that be incorporating like circular economies into the strategy? And has circular economics started in the UK? And how's that going?
In the UK, we were quite a long way behind the northern European countries in terms of our recycling strategy. So in 1999, the UK's recycling rate was 6%, and we were quite a long way behind. In the next 10 years, we really increased up to about 40% across the UK.
Yeah,
And the idea was to move slowly towards circular economic thinking.
great.
Then there was a change of government in the UK in 2010. We went from let's call them the Red Party to the Blue Party.
Yeah,
And the Blue Party had a very different policy. The Blue Party basically said, let the market take care of the situation.
yeah.
And as a result, the recycling rate in England has flatlined 10 years.
Wow.
It hasn't gone back, but it hasn't moved. It's basically been stuck around 42, 43, 44% for 10 years. However, now here's a really interesting one. It's different in Wales, because in Wales, it's controlled by the Welsh Assembly government, who is more red than blue.
I see.
And Wales has gone mad. So Wales is now the third highest recycling country in the world, with 62 or 63%. And Wales was the first country in the world, and I think still the only country in the world, that put into law that it would be carbon neutral by the end of 2020.
Well, has Southampton and other large cities in the UK, have they started organics, composting and recycling, or have they yet to start that?
Yeah, so Britain has, the answer to that question is quite complicated. The UK has used composting systems for a very long time for its parks and gardens waste.
Yeah.
And pretty much all UK local authorities, and there are over 360 of them, will collect garden waste and parks waste, and this is all sent off to composting plants, and they're collecting something like, I don't know, 380, 400,000 tons, and so, but it's still a very small proportion of the total waste collected. It's about 2 or 3%.
Gee.
Then there's food waste, okay?
Yeah.
And food waste is only collected by a relatively small number of authorities, 20 or 30 in the UK, 3 to 4 million tons of food waste, and that's only a fraction of 1%. But the importance of that is that it saves an awful lot of greenhouse gas emissions. It enables you to capture it and then make use of it as biogas and feed it into your energy mix. That's slow, but it's starting to come on. Southampton doesn't do it, but the next door authority, Eastleigh, does do it.
So do you actually have like a biogas plant, and it's extracted from all that waste that you were talking about?
Yeah, so they tend to use a mixture of it's a kind of mixture of aerobic and anaerobic systems.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of they tend to call them a digester, and they extract the biogas. We've got experimental systems set up on our science park, but they also do it very extensively for sewage sludge. And
Okay.
an awful lot of wastewater treatment plants extract biogas from sewage sludge and then use that to generate electricity.
Brilliant. So from your article, Ian, I read about the crown protection factor. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? And could this be used for green roofs and green walls in cities?
So the crown protection factor is a way of estimating a whole series of factors related to tree crowns.
Yeah.
It's quite a complicated thing to do because it involves a whole series of complicated equations. The principles could be used on green rooftops or green walls in cities, but it would have to be used in a different form to the way it is currently used, because you'd have to use different calculation methods.
And what is the I3 Eco approach?
Yeah, that's very interesting, actually. And that's an American initiative. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
Yeah, so the I3 Eco toolkit was actually produced by the United States Department of Agriculture's Forest Service.
Yeah.
It's been around for at least 10 years, if not longer. And it's a software package that's used to provide urban and community forestry analysis,
Right.
and give some idea of the benefits that you can get from it. And what you do is you take a whole range of field data, which includes data about the trees themselves, the types, the tree cover, and so on. And you can combine it with things such as air quality data and meteorological data. What you can do is you can assign an economic value, a monetary value, to the benefits that vegetation in urban areas gives.
Yeah.
You can actually have a monetary value to the benefit of, for example, the amount of atmospheric pollutants that are removed by trees per year. Its problem is that you actually need to map every single tree in an area.
Okay.
And that's very, very time consuming. But it's a great tool, and it's largely free. I think the US DA have provided to us in the past for free, but they also have a kind of cost system that they use as well.
I'm going to check that one out.
By the way, it has been used in New York.
Yeah, so we're actually doing a project, and I have a feeling that one of the tools in that project for Lower Manhattan, it could be this I3 Eco, but I'll double check on that.
There was something called the UFORE, UFORE, Urban Forest Effects Model, which was used in New York almost 10 years ago, I think. And I think there's a paper out on it.
Yeah.
And it looks at is trying to quantify the ecosystem services produced in cities like New York. They've also done Barcelona and a couple of other cities using the similar methodology. So it's quite well established now.
Last question, where do you see urban ecology going in maybe the next 10 to 15 years?
I think that the kind of tools that we've been talking about, the I3 software and the use of sustainable urban drainage systems and so on, combined with increasing awareness of the benefits you get from ecosystem services, are going to feed in a lot more into urban planning and urban ecology. And in particular, using vegetation and trees to absorb carbon, to mitigate the effects of air pollution, to reduce noise, to provide health benefits. You know, trees have been demonstrated to reduce depression, anxiety, improve people's just general well-being.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see an awful lot of increase of the use of ecosystem services in urban planning and urban ecology in the future. At the moment, it's quite slow. I think it's quite slow because people haven't really woken up to its real potential benefits.
Yeah.
And you've spoken to me about things such as green roofs. I think people are just nervous about putting green roofs on existing buildings. But there's no doubt that once we get some really good case studies in place, we're going to see a lot of this put into action. If you want to look for really good examples of where this has been applied seriously, I think Stockholm is the best example. I think Stockholm is now known as the first European green capital.
Wow.
It has really taken kind of using ecosystem services further than anybody else. Copenhagen is doing well. And I think Antwerp in Belgium is also having a good crack at this. So you can already see capital cities in the northern European parts of the world having a go at this. Obviously, New York's having a go at it. And once you start seeing these big cities doing it, people will start to copy it all over the place.
That was brilliant, Ian. Thanks a million for all the information.